have all the generic things that we get from the US regions. And we do understand that a lot of times, basically, that in the in the noise that is generated with the huge number of partners we have in the US, sometimes your requests or other pieces um, may not be heard loudly enough. And so we want to essentially kind of make sure that that gap does not exist. And so that's one of the reasons for why we're having this call. But today, basically, I'm going to focus on two things. One is essentially kind of um, I don't know how many of you basically have seen the new V4 platform, and we've spent a lot of time in other calls to go over the V4 platform, but I want to essentially do a run through of the new V4 platform that we've put together, which is basically an upgrade of the entire V3 platform, which provides V3 plus additional features, etc. We'll also talk about like how we can how things can be migrated very easily using this particular platform. And last but not the least, some of the initiatives that we are working on to make sure that your training efforts, all of that is basically kind of reduced as we move forward. So with that said, let me just quickly share my screen. So I'm just, yeah. So just gonna present. Okay. So um, just basically just in case, like, well, I think most of you know about this, but essentially we are a company which is headquartered in Tampa, Florida. We have our development center in basically Bangalore, in India. All of the R&D and basically the development runs out of Bangalore. We have our sales and support, etc., which is based out of the US. And so it becomes ideal for us because we also have the follow the sun model in terms of being able to support all of our customers. We in fact have a dedicated support desk which is based out of India, which basically starts at 5:30 a.m. in the morning, which is specifically for the Australian center. And as a background, we basically have been in this MSP industry for almost like 15 years now. Um, a number of products that you would have heard of in the past basically are products that were created by this group of people. So we started way back in the days of Zenith, where we basically were the people who built the whole BDR. Then we essentially built Replibit, which was basically another BDR solution. And then we then basically had a stint with ConnectWise, where we basically created your campaign manager, your chat, Unite, Cloud Console. All of these products were essentially something that this team essentially created. And post that, we essentially got into the whole cybersecurity space. And what we were called originally as Cyber CNS has become Connect Secure now because we acquired we have an external investor who happens to be from the external ConnectWise, basically Arnie Bellini and his son Peter Bellini basically invested in this, and they wanted to essentially kind of give back to the MSP community through this initiative. And we right now have more than 2,000 plus partners who basically use this product. And your feedback is extremely important to us. And we essentially kind of take every single feedback from every single partner very seriously. And it does not matter how big or how what revenue you're providing us, but it's more critical that the feedback that you give us, we are able to action it and we are able to close out on this. So from a positioning perspective, we essentially fall into the identify space. So we are essentially kind of people are a tool which essentially goes out into your network, discovers your network, finds out all vulnerabilities, checks your compliance, brings back data, and then basically provides you with a unified view, and then helps you basically gives you the recipe to attack those and basically fix those. Because the whole concept is if you secure your borders, if you basically fortify your borders and keep them secure, then that is the first line of defense that you have. So whenever you look at any attack that happens, whether it be ransomware or phishing attack or whatever it is, the first thing that they are looking for is any backdoors, unpatched backdoors that are there. And those unpatched backdoors are what is leveraged in order to basically either do lateral movements and compromise, etc., is all driven through this particular process. And so we want to enable every MSP to be able to go back to their customer and say that the service that I'm providing is to essentially shut out all of the backdoors And by shutting out all of these backdoors, I'm basically creating a network which is basically intrinsically secure. Now, will cyber attacks happen after that? Of course, it will happen because there is always going to be that person who basically opens the phishing mail and then downloads an exe. And for that, you essentially need the other pieces, which is the protect, detect, respond, and recover pieces. But more critically, whenever such an attack happens, also, if you've followed the correct posture, if your compliances are okay, then you can isolate the incident to a machine and you can limit the extent to which the attack can actually spread. And that is basically the very fundamental thing about all of these. Most of the attacks that you will hear today are about distributed attacks, right? Where somebody downloaded an exe today, it basically discovers the network. It then basically laterally moves, it copies itself over to other machines, and then waits in hibernation for what, 3 months, 6 weeks, whatever it is, and then it starts basically operating on that particular network. So this is the anatomy of most of the ransomware these days. It's gone are the days when it was all about attacking a single machine and getting out. And these days, the gestation period that it takes for something to show up basically can range anywhere between 1 month to, in some of the cases, basically almost like a year before which people can realize that there is an infection on the network. So that's essentially kind of what we want to do, is to essentially kind of close all the loopholes so that you can essentially kind of be aware that even if an attack happened, these attack surface is basically minimized. And so you do not have a big problem in hand. From a platform perspective, we basically are a single shop for asset discovery, vulnerability management, compliance management. We do complete PII scanning. We also basically have the ability to patch OS as well as applications. We have a bunch of 800 plus applications on the website, which we are patching today. We will be adding more and more applications. And if you have some applications that are critical that need to be patched, please send it over. We'll be helping you with that. Attack surface scanning. We do a complete Active Directory audit. We can impose application baselines, which means that you can define what are mandatory applications, what are non-mandatory applications, and we will allow you to essentially kind of audit this entire piece. We do help you with remediation planning with prioritization, and we do the prioritization based on the real-time statistics such as EPSS scores, CISA notified vulnerabilities. All of these basically are feeds that we receive in order to essentially provide you with the planning for remediation. And of course, our reporting, which basically we have custom reporting, we have standard reporting, we have the ability for you to white label reports and all of the 9 yards, right? So what I'll do is that very quickly, I'll go through a demo of the platform so that we are fully clear about what are the features. And this will also serve as a refresher so that in case you're basically, I'm sure that a lot of you are using the product, but in case there are certain features you're not using or whatever, this can basically serve as a segue into you starting to use this tool. So this is my demo instance, right? So what you can see is that in V4, you can essentially kind of customize how your UI looks like. So we've basically given you a complete set of, you can change your themes. You can basically you can like a more purple color, you can put a purple color, you can make default, you can whatever. And then you have layouts where you can basically have the left-hand side. So if you just want it as icons, then you can essentially create these as icons. If you want to basically kind of put it in classic way, you can basically put it back into the classic way. So we have complete UI options. You can basically put this in the menus on top. So all of that is basically available. And then you can choose basically how your asset view should look. Should it look like a table view or not a table view? All of that essentially can be set up out here. So all of these are essentially kind of settings that are there. So full customization on the UI. And then you can essentially white label the entire solution that you're providing access to. Okay. In addition to that, so for example, you have complete set of dashboards, like just as in V3, you have basically almost like 150, 140 dashboards, which are essentially in there, and you can search for those dashboards. It basically, so we have things like even essentially compliance standards and basically measurement of your thing against compliance and non-compliant, what is manual compliant, what is the achieved maturity status, all of these are there. You can essentially see what are the migration strategy details in terms of application control checks for each of the areas in Essential 8. You can essentially see all the details of all the compliances. You can go through it and basically look at it from an asset perspective. So all of these kinds of dashboards are basically being created so that it's easy for you to essentially kind of navigate the entire thing and look at summary information. And all information related to a particular dashboard has been basically kind of put together so that you can see summaries and you can see details in the same dashboard. So basically that way what happens is it becomes easy for you to, it's easily organized so that you can easily get to the data that you need. And then basically we have, when you go into a particular company, you can essentially see the complete metrics of that company. What is configured, what is not configured, how are you doing against each of those metrics? And plus basically all the events, like what are the things that have happened on a particular day. There is a complete timeline view over here, which shows you all the timeline views. So it basically tells you when was high severities were found, all of this. So complete timeline of when various activities occurred is basically out here. Okay. And agents, the whole thing about like the way that we operate as agents, you all are fully aware of it in terms of lightweight agents operate on a single machine, does not cross the machine boundary. And second is the probes, which basically are a single machine that's basically installed, a single agent that's installed on machine, and then will connect to all of the other machines and basically probe them. Both authenticated and non-authenticated scans. If you want network vulnerabilities, you need a probe agent. If you just want basically endpoint vulnerabilities and report on that, then lightweight agents are sufficient. Just wanted to make it clear that there is a single executable, unlike the older version. Here, essentially, when you install it, all agents will be lightweight agents. The moment you essentially configure network settings, then it becomes a probe, because a probe is nothing but a lightweight agent with the ability to scan the network. So that's how it has been built, so that it's simpler for you to deal with it. Uh, Now, basically, we can get into this all assets. So you can see all of the assets that are in here. And what we made it very easy for you to do is to basically kind of manage your entire asset panel, right? You can get in here and then you order it by this, the score. You can see which are the assets that you have to basically operate on immediately. So you can essentially see all of those IPs, you can see all of those details. Click on any of these. Basically, what happens is that you can see this panel. This panel basically shows you what is the device. You can essentially have metadata about the asset in terms of who's the asset owner. System details in terms of whether a reboot is required or not. And this is becoming very critical these days because a lot of people basically think they've installed the Microsoft patches, and then what happens is you've not rebooted it. So unless you reboot it, the patch is not applied. So while technically you've applied the patch is not effective, which means that your attack surface is still there. So essentially, this tells you whether a reboot is required or not required. What is the number of cores ran, and then basically whether the OS auto update has been enabled or disabled. What is the date on which this particular OS was installed? And then basically details of your storage, whether it is encrypted, not encrypted, your BIOS, complete details of your BIOS. Because these days, one of the biggest problems is that your BIOS and the UFI boot systems, they all basically have their own set of compromises. And so we have to essentially kind of look at BIOS versions and basically also match vulnerabilities against these BIOS versions. And then basically firewall policies and basically any certificates that may be there on the machine. So when you come down here, you can see all the problems that are associated with this device, which is all the vulnerabilities that are there. So it talks about all of the vulnerabilities. But most important thing that you are worried about is basically, I want solutions. What are the solutions that are there? And again, these essentially are categorized saying that based on the EPSS score. So if you see this here, it is organized by EPSS score, which means that these are things that you essentially have to patch first. So this particular putty is supposed to be something that's going to be patched first because this has been exploited. So that's why it's got an EPSS score of 0.96. Okay. And so you can see this categorization here. It talks about remediate within 3 days because there's a 95% probability of exploitation. So we have this organized over here so that you can essentially kind of prioritize and essentially do this. So all of these things essentially, which is EPS score of 0 or as close to 0, you can essentially choose to kind of remediate it at your own schedule, because the point is that those are not actively exploitable. So we all know the concept that there are a whole bunch of vulnerabilities that are being reported, but a lot of the vulnerabilities essentially require specific access to the machine and the ability to elevate yourself as an admin and do all of that stuff, which basically cannot be easily exploited. What is really exploitable is something that essentially can be used remotely, and second is can basically escalate privileges without any authorization. That's basically kind of the things that would cause bigger issues. You have a complete set of details on firewall rules, what is allowed inbound and what is allowed outbound, and what are the internal ports that are being used by different processes, and what are the external ports that are visible to the external world, and then a complete list of all the software, what software is installed on that machine. You have a complete inventory of all of those pieces. We also basically pull out all the extensions that are there on your browsers, because these days there are a lot of malicious extensions. And so we also discovered vulnerabilities with those malicious extensions. We have services, user shares, all of that. And then the most important is the security report card. Now, it talks about various parameters that essentially you should know about, which is, does it have any insecure listening ports? Okay, so then in that case, if it's no insecure listening ports, you get a grade of 5. In this particular case, if the local firewall is not enabled, then basically it is a 1. So in this particular case, what's happened is that the local firewall has been disabled, and so it is marked as 1. Whether backup software is enabled or available. So we have a whole bunch of list of backup software that basically we recognize. If any of it is installed, then it will essentially recognize that as backup software being enabled. There is basically also a check on anti-ransomware. And then if there are any network vulnerabilities, we also check about what is the supported OS. So for example, here you can see that the active support is basically till 9/1/2024, and security support is still 9/1/2029. However, since the active support period has ended, because it's basically close to ending, it's 1st of September, it's basically 9th of January, you have a score of 4 over here. So which means that there's only security patches that are coming, but no active support for the platform. That's why it's giving you a 4. If security support is removed, then essentially it becomes a 1, because then if there are any vulnerabilities, you do not get patching on those vulnerabilities. So this is an example of the whole thing. And second is basically we have the standard compliance report card, which talks about things like LLMNR, NTLM v1 being enabled, SMB v1, SMB TLS being 1.0 and 1.1, which are highly vulnerable, being enabled. And if there's any PowerShell version that, like PowerShell 2.0 is a big no-no. And if that's enabled, essentially it gives you a lower score. So this is essentially kind of giving you all the things which essentially you have to know in order to essentially kind of be compliant and be at a base level security. These basically must be all fine. That's basically the requirement that most people have. And so this will help you kind of navigate this entire piece. So we also basically scan firewalls. We can essentially kind of look at firewalls, and then we can look at problems from a overall perspective across the entire company. The other thing which we also have is basically that you can basically go and look very quickly at what are the OS patches which are pending for each of the operating systems. What are the ports that are being used across all of the assets that you have. So you can basically see this. Now I can essentially switch from a single company to basically global, and in which case I will basically can get a complete view of all the companies that I'm managing, all the ports that are being used across all of these companies. So you can actually set up like a compliance matrix for across all of your companies, what are the ports you're going to allow and not allow, and then essentially kind of go after any companies which have things. For example, here you can see that POP3 is something that you don't want people to enable, but you then see that POP3 is enabled on a couple of these companies, and then you can go after those to basically get them closed. External assets allows you to basically scan all your external assets, and this basically is something that's a standard with like websites or external IPs that are outside or your firewall itself, right? So we can essentially kind of look at all of the data from all of these pieces. So that's essentially what we have. So you can essentially see all of these scans, and you can get a report of all this scan, all of this details, and you can see all the results of the scans over here. So you can see that what is the risk score, And again, you can see the vulnerabilities here. And then you can basically kind of, you click on it, you can basically get a complete report saying what are the critical vulnerabilities, what are the ciphers, what are the attacks, what are the remediations, these HTTP headers. So headers, HTTP headers being missing, which could cause the problem. What are the open ports which are out there? All of those, this thing can you can essentially kind of get out of this. If there are any applications which are installed which are potentially vulnerable, it will find them also and basically show it to you. Then very quickly going to patch management. So this basically gives you all the assets that you need to patch from an application perspective. As I said, we have 800 plus applications that are supported today. And then we also support patching of the OS. So whenever a new patch appears, we'll basically tell you these are the OSs that essentially need to be patched. Um, and we talked about application baseline. So basically, we can define what are the mandatory applications and what applications don't you want to see. So example can be, I need EDR on each machine that I'm managing. So if an EDR is missing, then it can tell you and it will give you in a part of remediation plan saying that you have to install the EDR. And second is that software that needs to be, they should not be on the network. So for example, if your policy is that you're using Screen Connect and you don't want TeamViewer on any of the machines, then you will essentially say that TeamViewer is something that I don't want to see on the machines, and it essentially will discover that and tell you what it is. Attack surface mapper allows you to essentially look at the entire attack surface. So you can basically kind of see the details of the attack surface. So for example, I can go to any of the websites and then I can look at the complete attack surface. So it tells me how many open ports, target IPs, what are the DNS records that are there, what are the raw headers, what are the subdomains that basically exist over there, what are the MX records, and if there are any locations where there are any attacks that are possible, it will give me all of that information. And certificates basically is for completely managing your certificates. So you can see what all assets have what all certificates and whether it's a self-signed certificate, whether the cert is expired or it's going to be expiring in 30 days. And it also basically has the ability for you to do alerts based on whether a certificate is expiring. So this way you don't get out of compliance. So we have other views of vulnerabilities. So you can see vulnerabilities and you can kind of look at all the vulnerabilities by different categories, look at their base force, etc. Usually this is not a very interesting view because you can look at vulnerabilities because you will see thousands and thousands of vulnerabilities. But what is more important is that the fix to them might be a single patch or a couple of patches. And that's where basically we do this. But this is more about like lots of people have an interest in saying that, okay, I want to see. So this essentially kind of groups all the software that's installed here and then tells you on which OS is it installed and how many vulnerabilities are there. And then and the count of the assets. So you can essentially see this entire data. The same thing with network scan findings. As I told you, when you have a probe, it can basically go out into the network, figure out like all of the probe and all of the data, all the ports, etc. It can figure out what application versions are there. And based on that, it basically gives you a set of findings, which is basically the network scan findings. Now, yeah, it's very important to note that here we have a very specific column, which is called confirm. And here you can see basically some of these say no, so say no, and some of these say yes. Now, the reason we say no to a bunch of these is because in certain cases, like for example, SSL, we discover SSL, right? Now we are not able to determine the version. Originally, what we were doing is that if you're not able to determine a version, we don't basically throw out any vulnerabilities. We essentially say we're not able to determine a version, so we won't show any vulnerabilities. And this was basically kind of pointed out to us by a number of partners saying that this way you're leaving us exposed because other tools basically throw a bunch of vulnerabilities which basically could potentially be there. We understand that you're not being able to determine the version, but give us all the vulnerabilities that could be there, and we can choose to basically suppress it or not suppress it. Now, we didn't want to put this into the vulnerabilities, this thing directly, because if you put it in there, then you'll spend a lot of time sifting through this entire thing, which is why wherever we can confirm that this is absolutely a vulnerability, we basically have tests which can confirm this is a vulnerability, then we basically mark it as yes. The ones that are marked no are things that are potential false positives, but we have to provide them for the sake of compliance and basically so that you feel that you're not missing out on anything. That's why these confirm no items are basically present over there. Now, in terms of compliance, we basically have all the compliance standards that you saw in V3. In addition to that, we have added a whole bunch of compliance standards. And here you can see that we have ISO 27002 GDPR, NIST CS of 2.0, Essential 8, all of these basically uh, are compliant. The other difference is that we have the complete standard basically listed out here in terms of compliant, non-compliant, what is manually compliant, what is manual non-compliant, and the number of assets that are impacted because of this, right? So all of that data. You basically click on asset, you can essentially see all the assets right over here. You click on manual non-compliant, you can see which section of the compliance is not being met by these assets. If you click on non-compliant, these are automated compliances these are compliances that can be automated, but are not compliant. And compliant basically tells you what are the things which are compliant and what are the assets that are compliant with this whole thing. In addition to that, we have the entire compliance assessments, which is basically questionnaires that you can use templates to fill. So as you can see, we have a whole bunch of this thing. We start with, you can have a essentially 8 assessment you can start. We have HIPAA, we have PCI DSS, a whole bunch of NIST 171, NIST CSF 2.0 complete assessments, CMMC, DORA. All of these basically are assessments that we have essentially kind of created, and we are creating more and more assessments that you can essentially do. At the end of the assessments, you can essentially see a report which you can download along with all of the evidence that you can submit to an auditor. Okay. And this compliance check master basically shows you all of the checks that we do. So this in future will be used to enable all of you to essentially create your own set of compliance checks. And that's basically going to come probably towards the end of this year. Um, of course, basically Active Directory is now called Entra ID. And so we have the ability to kind of drill down into all of your Entra ID systems, look at all of the details into it. You can look at OUs, you can look at their domains, you can look at the company, all of that details out here. So, and then if you look at Active Directory, you can see all of the users, computers, groups, all of the things that you were used to. Whether something is a critical system object in OUs, and then you can basically click to users, you can see all the users, whether the password never expires, when is the password expired, is the password not required, is the account enabled or disabled, all of this basically details is out here. And then Microsoft Entra ID is basically your Azure Active Directory. So we support all of the details from Azure Active Directory also. You can also look at complete your license details in terms of consumed units and all of those details. And then you have the Microsoft Secure Score, all of the details of your secure score and why that score is basically out here is all there. We are introducing a new module which will essentially cover Office 365 as an add-on to this, which will do a complete Office 365 audit, which is being launched very shortly. So again, as I said, we have a lot of reports. These are all standard reports, which basically you've all seen in the older version. They continue to be here, and new reports keep getting added. You can essentially kind of filter based on from date to date, and you can essentially add tags. You can basically filter it based on multiple uh, parameters over here. In addition to that, basically we have standard report jobs which show you all of the reports, what type is generated, and you can download those standard report jobs. And you have scheduled reports also, which basically have all of the details of the scheduled reports. And these reports are generated and sent to you by email. It can be basically pushed into a OneDrive, or it could essentially be pushed into any other SFTP folder as we have in the earlier this thing. So, and apart, of course, we have all of the integrations. So we have alerts with all of these systems. We have email integrations with Connect Secure, your email, Office 365 email. We have firewall with Meraki. We have complete GRC with nuclear security. Microsoft Entra ID, as we talked about. We have integration with all the PSAs. So you can actually automatically open tickets whenever vulnerabilities happen, whenever remediations are discovered. And of course, reports, as I said, you can push it into Azure Blob Storage, Cloud Radial, SFTP. And we also integrate with all of these RMMs, and these RMMs are all basically integrated today. You can define all your application baseline rules over here. You can basically create this thing saying which OS, what is the application, what's the mandatory, and other thing. We also have the ability to create tag rules, right? So you can essentially create a tag based on a rule. You can say that I want to create a rule basically based on a risk score. I want to basically do it for assets, which basically have a certain risk score. And then I will want to assign this tag automatically to that particular asset. So That way you can, it's not, risk score is something that you can enter, but you can basically apply this on assets, you can apply it on ports, you can apply it on problems. Any of those essentially can be tagged as a protect. Okay. So with that, um, kind of this is an overview of the entire platform. And as I said, since we basically all the operations, since you are all MSPs, one of the things is that we are trying to move everything into a global level instead of a company level. More from a perspective saying that when you operate, you should operate from an efficiency perspective across all the companies rather than at a company by company level. So at a global level, we basically have provided visibilities and basically kind of you can see pending OS patches across all the companies. You can see application baselines across all the companies. You can define ticketing templates across all your companies. You can essentially do compliance checks across all of your companies. You can do vulnerabilities. You can look at all your vulnerabilities by OS across all of your companies. So that way, what happens is that it is easier for you to manage a group of companies rather than managing everything from a company by company perspective and automate things which can be automated in a very simple manner using this particular piece. Okay. So this is what I wanted to cover from a demo perspective. Um, so um, that now I will basically, uh, if I can take any questions that are there, and then I will hand it off to Barsha to talk about the migration from V3 to V4 and how straightforward it is.
Sir, we are in good shape for questions for now. If any partner has any additional questions, they can bring it up.
Perfect. So, Barsha, you want to take over the migration? I have, unfortunately, I have another call that I have to drop for, but I wanted to thank all of you for basically making it to the meeting today. And it's very good to see all of you. And we will basically continue this process of basically doing the AU calls probably once in a fortnight. And we'll basically keep you updated in terms of all the things in this thing. And I'm seeing a lot of very good feedback out there. Vishali, let's take this feedback and then route it back to Barsha, who can then put it into the development sprints and get this all out, please.
Sure, sir.
Thank you,
sir.
everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I hope my screen is visible.
No, Barsha, not yet.
Okay. Now?
Yes, it is.
All right. Thank you. So, mostly all the feature sets were demoed by Shiva sir. I'll just add on to 2 points, what we have in V4 today from the process standpoint. So for our new partners, we have the weekly onboarding calls, which you can attend. So this is the link, connectsecure.com/onboarding, through which you can register for the onboarding sessions. These are weekly. We also have our V4 onboarding guide as well. These are published. In addition to that, we have the weekly partner calls for major updates. So that is tabled by the C-suite leadership. So what's coming up in the next 2-3 weeks or in months, all that is informed to our partners. From the support perspective, for V4, we have quick triage of issues and faster assessment and prioritization of new features. So now that we know that V4 platform is the place to be for us, how do we initiate the replication from V3 to V4? Again, it's very seamless and easy, user-friendly. So this is the V3 portal. As highlighted here, this is the company replicate or resync option that migrates all your companies from the V3 portal to V4. In addition to this, there are also options from the agent section, wherein you can go to the probe agent from the global action, start the replication here. Same with the lightweight agent as well. So with this, we can start the replication. And next, we need to see the replication status. That's what is available in the V4. So we have also given easy navigation from V3 to V4. So as you browse the V3 URL, there is an option which says login to Connect Secure V4. So once you click on this, it takes you to our V4 portal. And from the profile section here on the top right, there is an option that shows the agent replication status. So it gives the details of the number of agents replicated, the ones that are pending, and the offline devices. So with all this in the UI itself, it makes a very seamless and easy replication from V3 to V4. However, we have our documentation published for the same. So there is a V3 to V4 replication guide. We have the V4 onboarding guide as well. Onboarding calls are there. You can raise issues with us by emailing to support@connectsecure.com. And we also have a V3 onboarding guide. Also, we can help you with uninstalling the V3 agents and upgrading them to V4. So with that, I'll move to the next section. When it comes to feature parity between V3 and V4, we have been able to successfully complete all the feature set that was there in V3. We have brought those in V4, except some minor changes which we are working towards. In addition, in V4, we are also offering the MSSP portal. That's for the managed security service providers, wherein you can track and manage all your MSP clients. So that's a separate portal altogether. Any partner who would be interested for this can email to support@connectsecure.com, and we can give you access to the MSSP portal. We can also help you in onboarding to this portal. So just email us at support@connectsecure.com. So just a couple of more points. The V4 enhancements. Um, as Shivasa mentioned, we have new compliance assessment, NIST CSF 2.0, DORA we have a couple of firewall integrations. So these are all additional in V4 that we did not have in V3. We have a couple of RMM integrations also new, the MSSP portal, which I just mentioned. And last but not the least, we have the custom cover page option for standard reports as well as for custom reports. So these are few that we have done till date. More to come in V4. And with that, we move to the next section. That's the support process, which we have for the V4 portal. Any questions so far?
Barsha, only one question. I
Yeah.
think somebody had on the chat was regarding when we're migrating, will it migrate offline agents when they will come online next? So I've just sent an answer to that, Michael. Thanks for bringing that up. So online agents will be migrated to start with actually. And anytime, so if you have other agents left, if you look at the replication status, you can anytime do the resync. Same button, if you click on, it will restart the replication again. So you should be able to do it for online agents for now.
All right. Thank you, Roshali. So Roshali, if you can go ahead with the support process overview.
Sure. Thanks, Barsha. Thanks everybody for joining in. So support process, I think many of the partners are already aware of the support process Connect Secure follows. So multiple ways to reach us. You can simply drop an email to support@connectsecure or even support@cybercns.com, which is the older email ID. Both the email IDs will help you create a ticket with us. It will automatically create a ticket in the fresh test ticketing system with us. We are also starting with the chat support. We currently have a limited availability for chat, but we are looking at expanding it to other times as well. Or you can, if you have a login available for the cybercns.freshtest.com, that is a fresh test site for Connect Secure, you can even submit a ticket using your login. Okay. So the way chat works is if you are sending a question on the chat box, if it does not get resolved on the chat by any chance, since as I said, we have a limited availability in there, it will automatically create a ticket and follow the question or the query on the ticket, right? So every ticket, once it is raised, we are sending the acknowledgement, right? So and then the triaging of the issue happens. Like we first will do the categorization of the issue, right? Whether it's a technical problem, is it billing, or it's a feature request, and accordingly the assignment and the categorization of the ticket happens. And then depending on what kind of a urgency or the impact of the issue has, we do the prioritization of that particular ticket or the issue which is raised, right? So if you want to raise any urgent tickets, like anything which is login related or you are stuck out of your console, by default, we take that as an urgent issue. If you want to raise something which needs urgent attention, you can also, you as a partner can also set the priority of the ticket as urgent, right? So there's an option while you're creating a ticket, and then it gets assigned to the appropriate teams and the appropriate agents to handle that ticket going forward. Barsha, if you can move to the next slide. Thank you. Then the way, yeah, so then the way it works is whichever group or so we have level one support, then we have QA, and then we have dev, right? So depending on which level of the teams are handling the issue, it gets analyzed, it gets investigated, and then troubleshooting definitely. So we provide necessary information over a ticket based on the issue. We try to provide as much as possible on the ticket with the help of documentation. We are also improving our documentation as and when it is needed. So anytime you feel that there's something which will help you to put that into a documentation, we are most happy to do that, right? So then we also provide certain troubleshooting steps if that is able to be managed by the partner. And then if required, we also request certain information, additional information to get the hint of what exactly is the issue. And then definitely the last step is to schedule a call and then escalate the ticket from one level to another level, however it is required. Now, this is the ticket handling process we have currently. After every ticket is resolved, by default, you will be sent a customer satisfaction survey link. Please use that link and share your feedback, or if you would like to share your individual feedbacks anytime, I'm Rushali and my email ID is given in here, rushali@connectsecure.com. I'll be happy to look into the feedback, what partners are providing here. And I think there's a question here. Okay, so Andrew says, are there plans to support ConnectWise Automate? So Andrew, you will like to go for ConnectWise Automate to send the agent deployment, correct? So we have the links readily available for that. Let me reach out to you separately over an email, and I'll share that link for the script for with you. Does that help? Oh, integration. Yes, this is something which we can definitely look at. I'll take a note of it, Andre, and I'll pass it on to the development team, and I'll let you know on that. I'll create a ticket for that. Thank you. All right. So, Prasha, I'm good at my end. Any more questions? Right. So I think everything looks good here. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking this time and joining this call. As Shiva sir said, that we are going to do this quite often, like a fortnight. You will hear the schedule from us soon, and do let us know in case if you need any additional topics to be covered or anything which you feel is an important topic, and we will be happy to help you with that. Sure, Luke. I'll see for the ticket from your end. So if let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
1 minute, Barsha. I think Sam has a question. API calls. Is there risk of anything breaking if we upgrade? Sam, would you like to get that checked with the team? If you have any ticket reference, Sam, otherwise please write to support@connectsecure.com and I'll connect you with the team over there. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you.